Hello everyone, back up here in the loft weir yard, and I've been putting up some pictures. These were formerly located out in the shed. So it's my brake fan. I really don't know what the origin of that photograph is. It was given to my father, and it's an actual photograph printed on photographic paper from probably the 1980s, I think. Well, I was always led to believe it came from Horwich Works, but the overhead line portal suggests it's more likely to be somewhere like Crewe, so I really don't know the origin of that picture. And then this as well came a job lot of stuff I was just gifted when my brother-in-law was actually refurbishing a house. He's a builder, you see. And there was a load of railway-related pictures that were just going to get dumped in the skip. So I donated all the others to a model railway club for them to sell on to raise some funds. But I did keep this one. And it's quite nice actually, so we got that there. And then there's also this metal sign, the District Railway notice. Basically, don't put your feet on the seats, do cooking in the compartment or pee out the window. So these may move around, but at the moment it's just finding a new home for them. What have I been up to? Well, you've been watching the bumper video, and the purpose of that was really just to get up to date. So what you've actually had is 2, maybe even 3 videos back to back, all edited together, just to get us up to date. Because the problem was that a lot of things were getting leaked, as it were, through photographs. And so it meant that also visitors that we'd had were filming stuff for their channel. So if you went and looked on there, you could see progress more progressed than on my own channel. I thought, no, I can't have that. So I've got up to date, and now I'm working on this embankment here. And this is the Woodland Scenic Shaper sheet. I'm just test fitting it all. I don't actually have a lot of this left. And at the moment, I'm a bit skint because I've spent a lot of money on various bits and pieces. So I'm trying to really make do with what I've got. So that's the last of the shaper sheet, and I'm going to fill it all that in, and then down here I'm probably going to just have to use polyfiller, go back to some old school methods just to finish off down there. So yeah, and also the turntable, I've done a lot of wiring actually. So we've got a load of points wired up, so all of these at the front all wired in, started wiring all these points up, wiring in the droppers, and now I can run trains reliably through a lot of the yard, and all of these tracks off the turntable are getting wired up, and I'm having them wired back to this on-off switch, one of the Pico on-off switches, notionally an isolating switch, but what I've done with that is just use it as a switch to be able to switch out all these tracks. And the reason for that is because I don't have a power booster at the moment. And I figured actually having all of these locomotives sat on the track live, it was causing some issues with the controller that I've got, the DCC controller. Basically what's apparent is I do need a power booster. You get all sorts of weird errors, like it forgets what trains are doing and trains stop responding if you have too many. Not even running, just sat on the track. They're all drawing a slight current, and a lot of these have sound chips in which will draw even more. So that just means that for the time being I can have trains on there, but not necessarily actually live to the layout. And also would theoretically mean I could have a load of DC locos sat in there, although that's probably a bit risky because one flick of the switch accidentally, if you catch it, and you end up frying a lot of motors. Now the other thing as well is that keeping with the turntable, I have salvaged from out in the shed all of my spare bits and pieces of Meccano. Now you remember the bridge in the garden. This is the box of Meccano, which a lot of that stuff came from, but there are some gears and stuff in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make up a gearbox. A lot of the gears over time have been reappropriated by my father, and they get used for things like the governor on his 1/3 scale steam traction engines. He just uses Meccano brass gears because they're just sort of a display item. They don't actually, they theoretically would work, but they're not connected up because there's no point. But that's where a lot of my gears have gone over the years, including my worm gear, which would have been really useful now for getting the turntable up and running. So what I'm going to have to do instead is root through this box and see what other gears, oh, it's a wheel, what other gears I can find in here. That's for a chain sprocket. But what other gears I can find, build up some kind of a gearbox with probably 6 or 7 gears in that will allow the winding of the handle to be transmitted down to quite a slow speed so the turntable doesn't just whiz round, and it makes lining it up a lot easier. So that's one of my plans for today as well. So I'm going to have something to eat and then I'm going to crack on. I also want to eventually clear some track off one of the baseboards in the shed, and that will give me some wood to use to face this as well. So that's on the cards for things that needs doing. I'm also planning on, over there, the J-cloth hills, completely and utterly rock solid dry. I've been over, you can see the white where I've been doing some sealant work just to stop any drafts. I need to finish all that off so that this area over here can get some work and hopefully reach a point where I don't have to worry about having to lean over everything. Now, I've also managed to get the overhead travelling crane out from the shed. It was a little bit tough to liberate that. It needs a few repairs where glue was cracked. But I'm planning on using that over there in that area as well somehow. So a little bit of thinking to go on. So there's still loads and loads of things to do. Still some wiring. You can see the wiring console there. Obviously, I've just shown you the isolating switch, but that is, it may move again a little bit because it's sticking out quite far. But certainly it's the final control station, as it were, for all of the electrics. I also need to see, what else do I need to do? I'm still short of a switch. You can see the empty slot in the end there. I need that switch to be able to wire up. I think it's that point is waiting to go to that switch. And then there's 2 other switches not wired to anything, and they will control these double slips up here. And then I've got a wire, there's 2 points up there which need to be slaved to the points at the other end of those loops so that they will all switch together. I've also got to wire up the double slip with the lead off the track. They're going to be wired up even though the sidings aren't going to be electrically live, just so it would be possible to shunt wagons in. So that's got to be done. And then this area here, we've got the little canal. Somebody was asking me about water features. That's where it goes. At the moment, the track just is in thin air. In double O, the track is actually fairly well self-supporting over short distances. But I need to build the bridges. I've got a couple of the Pico occupation bridges kits. They need to be built, all somehow sorted out in there. I might experiment with some of the Woodland Scenics resin kits for doing solid water. I'm going to have to seal it quite well because I don't want all the goo just falling on the floor. And that's pretty much where I'm up to. So I'm going to crack on now. Well, I decided to motorise the turntable. I thought, easy job, using that Meccano. You would not believe the amount of swearing that took place. And I can see as well that I've managed to snag a wire from somewhere. That's going to annoy me, trying to fault find where on earth that's come from. But you can see here the mechanism. And because my worm gear's already gone elsewhere to be used, I've had to improvise with other gears. Needs a good oiling, but there is the turntable working. Probably could have done with being a little bit lower geared, but actually it's not too bad because you do have to do a lot of turns of this crank to get it to go round, and hopefully there's a bit of slack going when you reverse direction. Hopefully it means that lining up tracks should be possible. There we go. So there we are, the turntable mechanism, and I'm going to try and get underneath just to show you just exactly what it is I've done. So at this end, this is the drive shaft to another shaft that then goes back to here, and then we've got gears there at the back, and then the biggest gear I had, and then that goes to this. Oh, this is very difficult. I can't actually see. The phone is filming. You can see there the final drive is actually quite slow. So there we are. Man, that was hard to do. Oh, it's very, very difficult to work underneath here upside down. So yeah, I think that's a good hour's work. I'm going to now WD-40 all of this. Hopefully be a bit smoother and won't squeak. Well, hard at work, covered in bits, but as you can see, the embankment here is done. It's still all wet. Same for the ballast, it's all wet. Once it's dried a little bit, I need to clean the track, which is why the track looks a little bit peculiar at the moment, basically because it's got glue on it. But it's a shame, really. You're not going to see a lot of this. I suppose when the camera train goes around, you will. But from this side, it still looks a bit naff, but I've got to retrieve a big piece of wood from the shed, cut to shape, and then that'll start to finish off this edge. I'll get it all painted in the brown, so it'll look nice. I'm going to see if I can get a better view along there. Yeah, you can just about see. I've got a little bit of a retaining wall just there. That's because otherwise the slope would have been too steep. So it all kind of fits in. It looks pretty good. Done a bit of wiring as well to make sure this siding here, which is notionally a shunter siding, so I can rack and stack up to 4 shunters on there. I've added a isolating switch to it. Again, the same problem that I talked to you before about with basically too many locomotives for my poor DCC controller to cope with at any one time. So if I can isolate certain tracks with locomotives on it, just helps that out until I can get a power booster. But that's pretty much where I'm up to today. I'm really pleased with the turntable mechanism. But I've really still got to contemplate over in that corner. The J-cloth hillside there needs all painting up, scatter putting on, and that's going to be a heck of a job because of trying to lean across all this. I'll obviously move all the stock and the locomotives out first. But yeah, let's crack on. For those of you wondering where we're at out in the shed, well, this is where I am up to, and you can see the Bolton East junction is no more. I've actually scraped the board clean, so it's going to get reused. Actually, that's a good board, reinforced and braced there, and I'll use that actually as is. But I've scraped all of the ballast and all sorts of scatter, everything like that. It's actually come off fairly cleanly, so it needs a wash, and then instant baseboard, I guess. Still got a lot of holes in from where the point motors came through, but they'll get repurposed as some of the storage sidings underneath. I do need to get these off in one piece. That's going to be a tricky job. I've got to unscrew it from underneath and see if I can lever it off and see where I get to. Signal box, there's still a signal there actually as well. That's all got to come up. But you can see track recovery is well underway. Not really done a lot in that area, but certainly a lot of bits and pieces have gone for recycling. I've recycled some more of the track out of the shed, and you can see here I've used some of the play and flexi track to be able to get the lead into the turntable area. It's already full of locomotives, but I've put a point in there, and this little spur here is probably going to be where a couple of TTA tankers can park with some pipework fittings to match up with, I'm thinking of putting a fueling station just along here so that locomotives can theoretically get fueled. But at the moment everything's just crammed in there. I do need to extend these two tracks further back. That is notionally going to be the shed area. Not got a shed, so I've got to work on that. But ostensibly the track work is pretty much finished. Just got to do this here. Needs to come round, so I've got some wood to go in there. I've got to build a frame for it to sort of triangle that off, and then come down here to join up with the incline from the lower level. But I don't want to fit that just yet because I still need to do that corner over there. I've got an idea what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to stuff it full of loft insulation, not fiberglass, before anybody says anything. But I've got a lot of recycled plastic bottles, of all things, going to more modern loft insulation, so you don't get the dangerous fibres off it. I'm going to stuff that into there because I've got some drafts coming from that far corner as well. Not huge ones, but just enough that it'll sort it out. And I'll kind of round it off and put, in effect, a fake back scene in there, paint it blue. And then hopefully there'll be enough room for, I've got a terrace of houses with a pub on the end. If I can salvage that, that's going to somehow fit in somewhere around there, maybe with some road scenes, some very low relief buildings too, just to have a sense that there's a community going on over there. Still got all of this to do, and I think that corner over there is probably the next contender for stuff what is going to get done. I've got to wire up the point motors, get them working, lay a bit of track. Once the track is laid, then I can start fixing down buildings, building up a ground level. I've also, once I get these all covered, grassed up, it's going to be great. Absolutely great. I know I keep saying that, I overuse that, but yeah, it's going to really come together quite nicely. Well, it's been a long day, but I've got a lot sorted out. So basically, I'm really pleased with progress. I've got the incline all pretty much done, and that's been an area that looks a bit weird when it's just the polystyrene. I'm just going to move around a bit, see if I can get a point where I'm actually in the light. Actually, there we are. That looks a bit better. No, it doesn't. It's really difficult to not look weird here. I'm just going to try and support my arm. But yeah, I've got some extra signalling in as well, and it's looking really good. It's starting to look finished off. That incline has looked a bit weird, just as the bare polystyrene for some time. And I've used the shaper sheet, the last of the shaper sheet that I've got down the main side of that embankment. And that's really good actually with the plaster because it sets so quick. But I'm now out of plaster, out of shaper sheet, and I'm hoping not to need to buy any more because it is a little bit expensive and a little bit strapped for cash at the moment. But it's really coming together nicely. As you can see though, out in the shed, that's pretty much looking, well, it's looking in its final throes of all being ripped up. But all of that stuff is coming on to a new lease of life. I've been recycling track, electrics, even the wire, station equipment, signalling, buildings, retaining walls, all sorts of stuff is being recycled. So actually there's not going to be a lot of stuff get thrown away from the out in the shed. In fact, I'm starting to recycle the baseboards from out there up into the loft so that they can be reused here as either structural bits or for the baseboards for the lowermost level. It's kind of nice to have a layout that's on 3 levels, and there is one little area in the loft where you can see all 3 levels stacked one on top of the other, which I just sat there watching trains going by, and it did look rather fun. But anyway, yeah, I hope this has been really enjoyable for you. Informative too, I hope. It's been really good to have your company here, watching this video, watching how the progress is all coming together up here on Weir Yard in the Loft. It's always good to have your company. But don't forget to tune in next Friday, when hopefully we'll be able to bring you yet more progress up here in the Loft. Yeah, a lot of people have said that I'm basically moving at an incredible rate. And that's just the way I am. I crack on with jobs, and what you don't see is that I've spent all my working week mulling over how I'm going to do it. So I kind of structure, it's almost like a Gantt diagram in my head that works out what I've got to do, when I've got to do it, how I'm going to do it. And that just means that everything works out for me. But anyway, you take really good care of yourself. That's me, Jenny Kirk, saying thanks for watching. And I'll see you again next time. Bye for now. Today's video has been brought to you in part thanks to the generous donation of my fans on Patreon. And a huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Mark Anthony, Michael Churchwood, Bob Threeton, Alec Ralph, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, and Offshore Alan. If you'd like to help support the show, head on over to patreon.com/Jennifer Kirk. Thank you. Today's video has been brought to you by my books, Bringing Home the Stars, Twinkle Little Star, and also you can get the complete comic collections of All Over the House, Books 1, Books 2, and also the wacky zany Life of Knobty Mouse. Thanks, and catch you later.